Hi everyone, my name is Sarahi.
Sorry.
Today I will be responding to Luis Montoya's claim, which was that the greatest negative effects on the environment come from animal agriculture. To support his claim, he first stated that the greenhouse gases generated by animal farming have a big negative effect on the environment by greatly contributing to global warming. Secondly, he mentioned that the amount of deforestation caused by animal farming industry has a substantial negative impact on the environment. And thirdly, that animal agriculture has become the greatest factor for the extinction of the species. To prove his first point, he compared the amount of carbon dioxide produced by livestock and their byproducts. Being these 51% of all worldwide greenhouse gas emissions, and the amount of transportation exhaust, which is only 13% of all greenhouse gas emissions. The difference of CO2 produced by the two different industries, livestock and transportation industry, is significantly drastic. However, the comparisons predetermined conditions for both cases are not in the same terms. The 51% of CO2 produced per year by livestock and their byproducts is taken into account the fossil fuel burning during production, gas and electricity use in the production process of livestock byproducts, and also greenhouse gases emitted on the transportation of refrigerated products. On the other hand, the transportation exhaust responsible for 13% of all greenhouse gas emissions is only considering the CO2 emitted when vehicles are used, and not the greenhouse gases produced in the manufacturing process. Producing a medium-sized new car costing $27,000 may generate more than 17 tons of CO2, almost as much as 3 years' worth of gas and electricity in the typical U.S. home. Analyzing both sides of the comparison under the same terms, it can be concluded that the contribution of both industries to global warming is equivalent. To prove his second point, the amount of deforestation caused by the animal farming industry has a substantial negative impact on the environment. Luis mentioned that 136 million rainforest acres are cleared for animal agriculture. The statement lacks of a specific time frame and credible sources. In addition, there are other human activities that also cause deforestation and have greater negative impact on the environment. According to the World Wildlife Fund, half of the trees illegally removed from forests are used as fuel. Other causes are to make more land available for housing and urbanization, or to harvest timber to create commercial items such as paper, furniture, and homes. So these points could also be causing deforestation and not only animal agriculture. To support his third point, how animal agriculture has become the greatest factor for the extinction of a species, Luis mentioned that we could see fishless oceans by 2048, and that 90 to 100 million tons of fish are pulled from our oceans each year. These claims are not properly cited, and they lack of credibility. Also, these points are not being connected or related to the topic clearly. So it is difficult to understand how animal agriculture is causing the extinction of the species. The audience can relate the factual data mentioned to other events and not necessarily animal agriculture. For example, the acid rain produced by fossil fuel industries changed the composition of rivers and seas, making them toxic for fishes. Many species of fish are not able to survive to acidic water, causing their extinction. So the 90 to 100 million tons of fish pulled from our oceans each year can also be caused by acid rain, and not only animal agriculture. To conclude, I agree that animal agriculture does have a negative impact on the environment. However, there are other causes that have a greater negative effect on the environment, such as burning fossil fuels industries, which are responsible for the emissions of CO2, accounted for about 82% of all U.S. greenhouse gas emissions, according to the Environment Protection Agency, contributing to global warming, acid rain, and the extinction of species.
All right, well, you cite the advocate's major proposition in the secondary claims pretty clearly. I think that's fine. I do think sometimes people are looking at all of the individual points a little too closely and not always paying attention to the bigger picture. And the truth is, both of them either are, maybe they're both bad. I think you could probably also argue that some of it is exaggerated in terms of what the impact is. That's a possible response also, but you're kind of focusing on the micro issue. Did the advocate really present points that prove this particular point? And you're willing to give them the major premise, and you're just going to challenge the minor premises. I think that's maybe a little bit problematic. Your arguments on the minor points are, I think, pretty solid, except that you sometimes criticize their evidence for not being clearly cited or not having credibility, and you don't give us a reason why it's not credible. And when you present evidence, you're not citing that information either. You had all this information, for instance, on the first point about what the manufacturing process is for regular vehicles, and that this information does not include that kind of data in the comparison. I'm going, and where did you get this from? How did you know this? I have no idea. I assume that somebody has done an analysis of this, and that's probably where you got your reference work, but you're not sharing it, just like you're accusing the advocate of not sharing it. So you want to be a little consistent on that. The signposting on the secondary points was clear, so I always knew where you were in the course of the argument. We ran into the same kind of issue on the second point. Here you did give a little bit better citation of evidence on this, and I should probably give you a little bit more credit on that because I forgot about that. There we go. The evidence from the World Wildlife Federation, for instance, talks about why there are multiple reasons that there's deforestation going on, and it's not just merely that it's been conflated with these other kinds of issues, and I like that. I think that undermines the causality substantially. I thought that was a good argument on that particular point. On the fishless oceans, I think you might want to be careful again about conceding the premise to begin with. I'm not sure that the oceans will be fishless by 2048. That seems like an awfully big inference, and same sort of thing. You say no citation and no credibility, which I think are good challenges to make. Let's make this. So what they're saying is in about 25 years, about 25 years, we're not going to have any fish in the ocean. Does that seem reasonable to any of you? That seems like an awfully big claim. And for example, if there's any estimate about the number of fish in the sea, you might want to present that and say, even if you took out 900 million fish, that only leaves 50 billion fish or something like that. Then you'd have some way of making comparison and suggesting why it's not a credible statement, other than just kind of your assertion that it's not credible. And then you kind of give an alternate causality argument that it's really less likely about fish agriculture and more about pollution that's going on. I think that's a reasonable argument to make also, that the source of the problem is not that we're all just consuming fish so much that there aren't going to be any more, but rather that there are things that we're doing in the oceans that create real problems. Here's the other thing I'm talking about. Sometimes you're looking at, it's like a bad contest, which dog is uglier? And you're basically saying, my dog is uglier than your dog. The problem is, both of you have ugly dogs, and that's kind of what's going on here. Do you want to concede that they're both ugly dogs? And what difference does it make if these bad things are going to happen? What difference does it make which one is true? There should be an argument about why that matters, and there isn't really an argument about that either from the advocate or from you, and I think you guys need to kind of look at that a little bit more. All right, thank you.